Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video, we are going to cover decision making in a project environment. How do you make decision? And the best project managers, they make what is called data-driven decision making. So you need to collect the data first, you analyze it, you represent the data, and then later on you make a decision on that. So that is what we're going to cover in this video, and it's quite important, whether you're a project member or project manager, you should be able to understand how do you make data-driven decision in a project environment. So let's move on. Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Oscar Mbira. I'm a certified project and program manager. In this video, I'm going to cover data processing in a project environment, which is one of the most important activities that you can ever expect in a project environment. So let's move on. In a project environment, when you're starting a project and you're executing a project, you're monitoring a project all the way up to closure, there is normally a lot of data that is coming in. I can give you a good example. It's like when you're running any business, you always collect some data to do with your business. The same also applies to project management. So in project management, as you initiate your project, execute your project, and then close your project, you collect a lot of information all the way along the journey. And one mistake I've seen so many project managers making is not to take advantage of that information. They collect, they make decisions, they move on, that's it. I can tell you, managing data, you might want to call it data, it's the same thing. Managing data in a project environment is very, very critical. It's very, very important, and you should consider that whether you're a project manager or you're even just a project member or even a project team manager. The information that you collect is very important for your decisions. So there are basically 4 stages that you take through the data that you have in a project environment. So the first one is data gathering. We are going to cover a number of items or ways to gather data. For example, we talk of brainstorming as an example of data gathering. We are also talking of, say, interviews. You can also interview people for you to gather information. You can also send questionnaires, and you can also do some surveys just to make sure that at least you're able to gather information. So data gathering, we are going to cover on that particular aspect. Then the second item, is data analysis. So, after gathering the data, you also need to analyze it. You need to get more information, or you want to transform it from data, which is raw data, to information. That is also very, very important. You normally make decisions based on information. Say, for example, you want to analyze for the last week, how is the team performing in terms of, say, defect resolution, assuming it's a software company or it's a software project. How is the team performing in terms of attending to requirements from the user, resolving issues coming from the user. So that is what is called trend analysis. You also want to look at variations, say for example, cost variation from last month to this month. So this is all part of data analysis. Then the third one is data representation. How do you show the information that you've been collecting over time, whether it's a week, it's a month, or it's a year, pertaining to that project? How do you represent it? Especially when it comes to stakeholders or people who are not involved in the day-to-day running of the project. How do you represent that information? So we are going to look at histograms, for example, which shows the distribution of the information. We are also going to look at a number of them so that we appreciate what exactly does it mean when you say want to represent data that is coming from the project. Then the last one, which is very, very critical, is all these stages. You are gathering data, you are analyzing it, you are also representing it. You now need to make a decision. Should we increase the budget? Should we increase the resources? Should we reduce the resources? Are we supposed to adjust our schedule? And so on and so forth. So that is why it's very important that, especially if you're a project manager, you make what are called data-driven decisions in a project environment. That is very, very important. And this is what we are going to cover in this particular video. It's going to be quite interesting, and I would encourage you to watch this video all the way up to the end. So let's move on one by one. We are going to look at these 4 stages: data analysis, data gathering, data representation, and then decision making. I hope you're enjoying the video so far. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to click the like button, subscribe button, and the notification button so that you're the first person to be notified each time a new video is uploaded on this channel. It will also help this channel to grow. It will also help this channel to produce more videos like this one. So you could be asking, Oscar, why does data matter in a project environment? I'm going to explain to you. Data management in a project environment is very, very important. And one of them that you have to appreciate is decision making. Don't make decisions based on opinions or based on bias. Always try to make sure that your decisions, they are based on the data that you are collecting when either before starting the project, during the project, and even when you're closing the project. You cannot make a decision based on your personal opinions in a project. Always try to understand, especially from all the stakeholders from the project team, what information is available for you to make that decision. So it matters because you need to make a decision. Number two, why it matters to have data management or understanding in a project environment is also on risk management. You also need to manage risk in a project. But how do you manage risk if you don't understand what is going on? If you don't collect the information that is required for you to understand probably the impact of the risk, the probability of the risk, and also the proximity of the risk. So it's quite important that you appreciate and understand that you use that data for decision making, you use that data for risk management. If you want to understand more about risk management, I've created a video on risk management. You can also watch it on my channel. I'll also leave a link in the description below. Then the next one is you want your stakeholders to trust you. Stakeholders, they don't normally trust you based on your opinions. They also want you to back up your opinions with some data. Next, with some information, some numbers, okay? So it's quite important that you also collect this information in a project environment. I've seen some scenarios where the information is scattered all over. You find someone has got an Excel sheet sitting somewhere, someone has got a Word document sitting somewhere, someone has got a plan of activities sitting somewhere. So this is where we encourage you to have the project management information system, PMIS. If you want to explore some of these tools that are existing, I'm going to leave a link in the description below. You can also check some of these tools where the information is actually centralized and it becomes very easy for you to manage information in a project environment. Then you also need to use the data for continuous improvement. Some they want to call it lessons learned. You cannot learn something until and unless you understand what was it, what caused it, how can you improve it, what are you learning, and how can you apply it into other projects or into the organization as a whole. So data management in environment is also very important because you also use it for continuous learning, you also use it for lessons learned. You're asking, what do you mean by continuous improvement? So when you are running a project, there are certain repetitive phases that you might face in a project environment. You do it and then you do it again, you do it and then you do it again. Say for example, you are doing construction project. You want to build a 20-story building. So after finishing the first floor, you repeat the same thing for the second floor, you repeat the same thing for the third floor. But there are certain lessons that you are picking from that process. So this is where I'm saying, those lessons that you are picking, you need a way to manage them. You need a way to gather them and then improve the next stage and so on and so forth. In a project environment, when you have all the data, it's easier for you to control the scope. It's easier for you to control the costs. It's easier for you to also control the schedule. So data management in a project environment is very important because you also control the scope. You also control the schedule as well as the budget. You cannot control the budget without gathering information on how much has been spent for the previous phases, how much you intend to spend for the next phases. So data gathering is very important, and this is where it becomes very important for you to make decisions. If you want to dive deeper into understanding what is project management, I've also created for you a very comprehensive ebook, which you can also access using the link in the description below. In this section of the video, we are covering decision making in a project environment. Decision making in a project environment should be data driven. So this is one of the last, can I say, activity or stage in data processing in a project environment. You start with your data gathering using brainstorming, interviews, and so forth. Then you go to your analysis using variance analysis, trend analysis, and so on and so forth. Then you also have a representation where you have, say, for example, histograms. You also have the matrix that you can also, the fishbone representation that you can also. Now, when it comes to decision making, you want to answer the question, what do we do now? Which means you have understood everything. So what are you going to do? Say, for example, you have understood that your budget is going up in terms of spending, and you might not make it up to the end of the project. So what do? Do you stop the project? Do you want to increase the budget? Do you want to change your vendor, your partner? Do you want to change your location? What exactly do you want to do? So decision making normally has got three kinds of decision making that you can do. One of them is voting. So when it comes to voting, you want people to present themselves as to which decision do they like as compared to the other. Then you also have multi-criteria decision making, we are going to go through them one by one, multi-criteria. And then the last one is what is called autocratic decision making in a project environment. So you want to answer the question, what do we do now? So let us go through these three types of decision making in a project environment to understand them. So the first one we're going to start with is voting. So normally in a voting environment, you put together a group of people to determine what should be done. Should you reject something? Should you change something? Should you accept something or not? And then based on this voting, you can also make a decision. In most cases, it allows you to have some transparent way of looking at things, okay? So there are three types of voting that you normally go through. The first one is what is called majority wins, which means if more than 50% of the people they vote, then you take that decision in a project environment. I can tell you there are certain projects where you have to go for voting. I know some of you might be saying, we don't need to vote, the project manager will make a decision. No, there are certain cases where you have to vote. Do we really accept this change? Do we have to do this activity? Do we have to provide this to the stakeholders? Or do we have the right stakeholders in the project environment? So in some cases, you might need to make that voting decision, not only one-to-one, like a PM or just a project team leader, no. Then you have another one called unanimity in terms of voting, which means everyone is agreeing. If everyone doesn't agree, what is called vetoing, if someone doesn't agree, then you don't take that decision. But if everyone agrees, you take that decision. We also have cases like that where we have those decisions. For example, you have a high risk or no go decision for a product. You must agree, everyone. I was involved in software projects. When it comes to go or no go live decision, everyone has to agree. If someone doesn't agree, then you might not even go live with that project. So there's also this category of unanimity where everyone agrees for you to make a decision. Then we have the last one called plurality. Okay, on plurality, what it means is the option with the most votes is going to win. Whether it's 10 people or 12 people or 15, you're the ones who are going to win. And what does it mean? Say, for example, you choose a certain vendor. 4, they've said no to this vendor. 3 have said yes. 2 have said no. So 4 is going to win. So plurality is actually very, very important for voting in a project environment. So the next technique that you can use for decision making in a project environment is what is called multi-criteria decision making, which means you normally create a matrix. Remember what we discussed earlier on matrix, where you have your criteria is one column with criteria. Then your rows, they also represent what you are putting in as the weight. Then at the end of the day, like what you are seeing on the screen, at the end of the day, you make a decision based on that. Say, for example, you want to select a certain project management tool, okay? So one of the items you look at is cost, okay? So for each cost, you look at each and every tool. How much does it cost every tool? For example, you're looking at Jira, you're looking at Asana, you're looking at Monday, for example, you're also looking at Microsoft Project, you're even looking at Project Nidus is one of the examples. So you're looking at cost, multi-criteria decision. For each and every tool, you look at cost. That's the first criteria. Second criteria, you might look at ease of use. Okay, then you are putting the weights of those items, and then you can also look at even features, because this is a software tool, project management tool. We are looking at as an example. You are looking at features. You also put a weight for each and every tool that you have. The other criteria is also integration. How easy is it to integrate with other systems? So you also put some weight on that. Then using the calculated weight, you choose the one which has got the highest weight, and that's the one that you go with. The good thing about some of these techniques when it comes to decision making is they remove bias. If someone is biased towards something, then it will not make sense in that particular scenario, because you're using logic, you're using a number of, in some cases, you're actually using expert judgment to say this one 2%, this one 3%, this one 5%, this one 6%. Then you get the weighting for each, then you make a decision. So multi-criteria decision making in a project environment is very important. And in most cases, when applied very well, it gives you very good results. In some situations in a project environment, you'll find that what is called autocratic decision making also works very well, especially when it comes to expert projects. One person can make a decision, whether it's a project manager, it's a technical lead, or it's a business lead, or even sponsor. But in an autocratic decision-making environment, only one person makes a decision. It has got its own advantages and disadvantages. But in most cases, autocratic environments or decisions, they gather inputs from members or from stakeholders before they make a decision. So there are certain cases where it works very well. There are also certain cases where it doesn't work very well when it comes to autocratic decision making. So let us quickly look at some of the examples where it's best autocratic decision making, where one person makes a decision after so many inputs from the project members. Say, for example, there's a crisis or emergency and there's no time for consensus. You cannot wait for people to gather and then make a decision collectively. In that case, one person will just make a decision. It might not be a good example of a project, but if I give you a political environment, the president can make a decision quickly. They don't have to gather the cabinet, as an example. Also in a project environment, a project manager can make a decision without even gathering the team members, if that is necessary. Okay? Crisis, for example. For example, there are low stakes in terms of decision making or in terms of routine decisions. Then someone can just make a decision, something routine. Do we have to approve this change, yes or no? Someone can say approve it or reject. Okay? Then, like I said earlier, if the decision maker has got unique skills, okay, or expertise, they can also make a decision. Say, for example, there's a technical lead in a software development environment. They can make a decision as to how the solution is supposed to be designed. They can also make a decision in terms of the tools to be used in the project environment. So that is also very, very important. And in some cases, when there is a deadlock in a project team environment, or even the cost of delay is too much, one person can make a decision. In most cases, a sponsor. If the cost of delay is too much, a sponsor can make a decision, don't do it, or proceed to do it, and then we can fund it later. There are also cases where the scope is clearly defined. If the scope is clearly defined, then there's no need to gather a number of people to make a decision. One person can make a decision, and then you can also move on. And then, depending on the organizational setup or structure, there are cases where the sponsor can actually make a decision in a project. They're using authority. It might not be even a sponsor. It could be even change board. They have authority. And maybe the chair of that body or even the project board can make a decision. So there are also cases where also authority is there and people can make a decision. So decision making can also be done by one person in such a scenario. Then, there are also risks associated with the autocratic decision making, in case you want to go for that. For myself, I try by all means to avoid applying autocratic decision making. But there are also some risks and cautions that you have to take into consideration. If you overuse that, people become very disengaged. Either stakeholders become disengaged or team members become disengaged. And they might not even support some of these decisions. And it might lead to the failure of that decision or even the project in totality. So you must use it with care. And if you get incomplete information as an individual, you might make the incorrect or poor decision because of the wrong information that we have. So when it comes to autocratic decision making, you have to be very, very, very careful before you take any action. And in some cases, if you just use it arbitrarily, it might damage trust. People might not trust you in your decision, especially if previously you've made some decision which was poor and which led to some negative consequences. People will lose trust in that process altogether. So you need to be very, very careful when it comes to autocratic decision. It's not something that you can always apply. Remember, if you're a project manager, you should always be facilitating and you should allow the people or the team members to decide or to take the route that you think is the best for the project. So let us look at which decision to use and by when, as you can see it on the screen. So when it comes to majority voting, the speed is very medium, but it's best for team decisions and also selecting tools and approaches. The risk is also medium. And then we have an example situation where 8% team votes on a sprint length, as an example. Then the decision on unanimity, speed also is very slow and is also best for high stakes and go or no go critical decisions. The risk is also very low, and also all sponsor agrees to project cancellation. Okay, all sponsors, as an example. Then plurality, we have medium speed. We have best for selecting from 3 or so options without consensus. You can use the plurality. And then risk also is medium. And then example is a situation. Example situation is when vendor selection with 4 candidates. Then when it comes to multi-criteria decision-making, MCDA, the speed is slow, but it's best for complex trade-offs needing objectivity. And also the risk is very low. Then you have as an example, you want to choose ERP systems across 6 criteria. So you can also use it. We have looked at one example before. When it comes to autocratic, the speed is very fast, because remember it's one person who is making that decision. And then it's also good for crisis. It's also good for emergence or even clearly owned decisions. And then the risk is also very high because they might use incorrect or poor information or even bias. And also you might have disengaged stakeholders and project members. Then PM makes agent technical call during the incident, as an example. So this is quite important. If you want me to create more videos based on what we have covered in this video, or maybe there's a concept or there's an idea which is not yet clear to you, you can reach out to me or you can let me know in the comment section below. Thank you for watching.